Hello there and welcome. In this video I got you a new archer build for the feudal culture that I will introduce in 7 steps to you. We're going to talk over all the things that you need to know, and in the very first step, number 1, I want to introduce the basic idea of what we're doing here. We're playing a monarchic archer build, which means our troops get stronger on the side of their monarch, they get also free under the banner of the monarch, and we are utilizing mostly those fancy longbow archers that we gain. This build is very centric around damage dealing, meant to be played with a giant or a dragon ruler because the affinity game is otherwise really disgusting to play around. And the main takeaway here is if you can pull it off as you want to, it features a lot of damage and a lot of destructive capabilities and has at the same time enough flexibility to dodge into directions that are necessary to beat the enemy still. You also have a solid economy, and overall I found it to be a very enjoyable build because, it's never grown old to play around archers. So let's move on to number 2, to our racial and cultural traits. I went here for keen-sighted, which is the only thing that I see as a must-have, because increased accuracy is so powerful for any archer-centric build. Here I went for sneaky and cheerful as a combination, because flanking is pretty easy to pull off, because you have very mobile troops, very powerful for your knights and the like, and cheerful, you have a pretty good interaction with morale gameplay, so that's also a nice combination here. You could change these by picking strong instead of sneaky for a more generalistic approach, and cheerful could be also exchanged for the trait that increases the XP gain, because the promotion system of the feudals is pretty nice at the same time. So options are here. Cultural trait-wise, we have the same picture. We have a lot of options to pick from, and this is one of the builds that is very flexible on this end. Here I went for Reclaimers, because Reclaimers is a real nice trait on dragons and giants, which have an innate power around the item forge. Dragons need it for their gear, as do giants, but dragons also gain extra gold from items crafted, so you can directly convert the binding essence into gold. If you even pick the other Materium trait to gain mana from your items, you can go crazy with that. We're playing here secondary with Cult of Personality. Here again, I went for this more for the sake of experimenting. I could see Keepers of Knowledge work really well here if you want to pick a different shadow trait. Also, I see the nature traits as a real big option here. The expanded governance and the fabled hunters should work nicely too, as would order traits for a bigger interaction with the free cities. Like I said, very flexible build with many directions that work well. Let's move on to number 2, the tome section of the build. So the center combo we're playing around works around with Zeal, Legion of Zeal, powering up our attackers, Inspiring Chant, a really good 2-hex radius booster spell, which increases our damage substantially. These two work extremely well together. Fanatical Workforce to get our projects in the cities done quicker, really invaluable. And the rest of the things in the tome are not that much to write home about. The Tome of Alchemy is then the other part of our synergy. We use Zeal's condemnation, spirit damage in combination with Afflicting Miasma to trigger condemnation on our enemies, because condemnation is also triggering lower status resistance, and we're utilizing that on many ends. This is a pretty nice basic combination. The Alchemy Tome does offer us knowledge income via Alchemist's Lab and Material Refinery, and condition control via Mysterious Tonic and Antimagic Tincture. The Fumigation is nice, but I wouldn't spend too much of an effort into it. The Afflictors are something you can pretty much skip because we have just better archers at hand, but at the end of the day, if you can't build a longbow, if you need something solid on the get-go, the Afflictor isn't bad, and they can't spread miasma without a spell. That's pretty cool too. With tier 2, we went straight into Revelry, and this is pretty much where the build is sorta done on its core and goes into its flexible paths. Revelry, though, I would strongly recommend because of the interaction of Revels of Carnage and our promotion system. Put this onto the banners where you got archers and knights to train them faster. It's really powerful. Blood Fury weapons isn't bad either. The sad part is it doesn't buff up our archers, but tier 2 is a sector where you don't get too many options to buff up your archers besides Tome of Winds. The Carnival of Flesh is another thing why I say the Revelry Tome is such a good pick. You have a lot of synergy with farms, and here goes even more of that. Skulls are excellent company to your bannermen, and they are really powerful insofar as they increase your damage potential while maintaining the morale gameplay, maintaining some soft sustain, and disabling the enemy via insanity, which we have on a higher chance to inflict because of the status reduction of the condemnation. Pretty nice stuff. So from this point on, it really depends on what you want to play and what affinities you've picked on your leader. I strongly recommend to make yourself a little bit of a plan where you want to go on the tier 3 end of things and the tier 4 end of things, because otherwise it will be a little bit difficult and you might end up not where you want to be. I went here for my personal variant of the build with Tome of Shades. Shades doesn't do anything directly for our archers. It does, though, increase the potential for our melee troops, which is important because we don't have that much frontline, and we power it up via shadow blades massively, and living shadows makes us a lot harder to kill. Rending shadows gives us the ability to blind the enemy and sunder the defenses again. Blindness negates retaliation attacks, is also good for builds that don't have the biggest frontline to begin with, so pretty nifty thing. And the shade units are really good tier 3 troopers to inflict a lot of damage, blindness, and Shade Network rounds it up with another point of knowledge income. Here you could pick, if you wanted to, as a variant, the Tome of Winds for stupidly far shooting longbow archers, because, you know, they already have a +1 on range. Alternatively, I can see Mayhem working really well here too, with Mark of Misfortune and the Gremlins making the enemy flankable quicker. Very, very powerful things. And I also can see the Tome of Artificing work here quite well, with artisan armaments for your frontliners and giving you access to the Iron Golems to have a real frontliner for your build. Because that is something that my variant of the build completely lacks, but it works still, at least against the AI, pretty decently in my experiences. Now, with the tier 3 area of things, I'm here heading on towards a Geomancy pick, which is really currently one of those tomes I pick mostly because it's so overloaded. I expect it to be changed in the future, and then I think Transmutation would be a more solid pick. But currently, as it stands, Geomancy brings you more damage for your fighters in form of negative status effect application and Geomantic Crystallization, increasing the attacks of all your troops completely. That's pretty powerful. And the Geomancer, we might not have much buff ups for battle mages, but these guys are so good on what they do by themselves that you can't just use them, or you don't. Summon Elemental goes really, really nice alongside of your Monarch. You have tier 3 units that you can summon and don't have to pay for. And the Geomantic Resonance Hall is a really nice money earner. From this point on, we would be affinity-wise at a point where it doesn't look like I could pick it, but I have a Dragon Ruler that is currently working on the 3rd point of Chaos, and my variant goes from Geomancy to Pandemonium. Because now we have Battle Mages that utilize Havoc Magic, we have so many statuses that we inflict that Vessels of Chaos is really worth it, and the Chaos Eater can just yum around and go crazy. This is then leading tier 4 wise to the Tome of the Crucible, because we can then again get ourselves a little bit of Materium affinity again, via our ruler again. This is why I said initially you need those. Crucible for Meteor projectiles, and after that going into the Tome of Calamity for Accursed projectiles and the other goodies that are in there. You can do many other things, because like I said, you are very open for flexible choices. This is just a path that I enjoyed a lot, which leads to archers that just hit like a truck and do so as an AoE. It's fun. Now, number 4, armies. So your army setup is pretty simple. Archers are never a bad choice because they eventually either die or turn into longbows. so you can print as many or few of these as you want whenever you have slots for open on your cities. Defenders, on the other hand, if you have heroes that can fill their position, perfect. If not, build as many as you need, but not one guy of them more. Alternatively, if you don't want to go for defenders, you can either call militia or summon zealots for those slots. They die faster, but at the end of the day, your frontline's main job is to keep space between your archers so they can kill stuff, not the other way around. The aspirant knights are really good things to go into the enemy backline with. Very potent to take down the stuff that wants to kill your archers or the stuff that can nuke things. Therefore, very important for your armies. And the bannermen are the people that are standing right behind your front line, doing the increases of defense and resistance that they require. Nowadays, War Banner is a passive effect, which is new, which just increases the defense around them. So put these behind your tier 1 units and they become surprisingly robust. On top of that, we have a nice touch shield, so very important things too. And the last part of your army setup is the longbow, which is extremely long-ranging and hard-hitting, and it's just a wonderful unit. So your army setup will be usually 2 frontliners, 4 ranged attackers, or 50-50 if you want to be a little bit more careful. I personally think 1 shield, 1 shock, 1 support, 3 archers is nice, but as you see here, this setup works quite nicely too. And what I want to say here, combat behavior is pretty simple. You put the shields in front or the spears, you put the supporters behind, and then you let the enemy come and shoot them down. End of the story. You can get yourself some help with the spells at your hand. Inspiring Chant for more damage. Call to Glory for a morale bonus all over the board. Afflicting Miasma to get the enemy debuffed. It also weakens. And Anti-Magic Tincture if the enemy starts debuffing you. It's a very straightforward and easy concept. You will lose troops though. This is one of the things that is integrated into the strategy. So dedicate your tier 1 troopers to die if necessary and just resummon them after the combat wherever needed. Number 5, cities and Imperium spending. So your cities are best spaced out widely. Wider spaced out than mine here, actually. I did this a little bit wrong. This is where Cult of Personality comes in very, very handy. You can hire heroes very early on and then send them out to get you first 3 cities with a premium free estate around them. This is really good. Your cities are very good at churning out large amounts of food, hence the need for much territory. The monarchy buildings that you can build also have a high amount of city stability income, so you can hold a lot of provinces off of yourself, which is really, really nice. In the Imperium spending area, this is a very rainbowy build, depending on how you skill your ruler, but 2 things remain: a heavy focus into order and materium, which leads us to stronger capabilities to build cities. And I just want to point out that career soldiers is absolutely sort of a must-have for your troops, because it only works for your knights, but your knights need to be trained fast. It's one of the most important things. And before I move on to the heroes, one last thing. Your empire needs those tier 4 town halls more than others, because without it, your aspirant knights never turn into actual knights, which are really important. Number 6, the heroes. So, like I said, giant or dragon for the affinity gameplay, so you can adjust affinity points as required. You can start out with an affinity that you need, and so on. Class-wise, pick something that can stand between the enemies, preferably. Heroes like defenders and warriors and death knights and all the things that love to stand in between are, in my opinion, the best to choose for this build, because we have a cultural lack of good frontliners for this build. Strong heroes just fill that gap and do this job just nicely. A honorable mention goes out to ritualists, which can insanely well support the people in the front line, or keep your weaker units alive, or support you with summoned units that can die instead of your troops. These are the options, and I personally think there's plenty of them, and this is Also where I think the build shines. Also, if you play the variant like shown here in the video, you have super early access to the item forge, which means your heroes can be geared out quite good. Number 7, the game plan, the strategy. So you want to get out your cities early on, so scout printing and scouting is one of the most important things. Cult of Personality helps you here to get the units going, but even if you don't have it, try to get your 3 cities out as quick as you can, and then start working on your cities, and enjoy the fact that you have a very easy time setting up your roster. You can do as many archers as you want, as these are never a bad choice. You should race to tier 2 and you should race to the higher town halls as quick as possible, but the fun part is that 1 or 2 bannermen and the rest tier 1 units are more than enough to tackle it through the early game. Your biggest weakness is that you have a you need a power-up wind-up phase, so to speak. So you are early on quite weak, and friendship with other free cities is personally, I think, one of the strongest ways to deal with the problematic of the lack of units. The Rally of Lieges can give you access to everything you require. For example, other troops that would fill your weaknesses. But from the beginning on, I strongly recommend to focus on the weaknesses you got, because the longbow archers become, in combination with what you got, destructive tools on their own. You need to focus on staying alive, keeping the front line maintained, and picking up tools to make things easier along the way. And you'll be rewarded with one hell of a destructive build. I really enjoyed that. If you find it too challenging to play with the given tome selection, because I gotta say, it is very glass cannon-y what I built here, go for alternatives and build yourself a little bit tanky. Exchange the shades for winds, or exchange shades for misfortune, and go for the misfortune pandemonium combo, which cripples the enemy and increases your damage potential brutally. There's plenty of things. You could also swap the Tome of Zeal with the Tome of Faith for more healing capabilities. It's a very adaptive build, which I personally like so much about it, and therefore, if you find problems on some end, I strongly encourage you to adapt and change to your own playstyle. That all being said, thanks for watching. Leave me your comments down below. Leave a like, leave a subscribe. Feel free to support the channel via YouTube channel membership or given means downstairs below. Many thanks go out for you who support the channel, and many thanks go out for you who watch these videos up until the very end. Deeply appreciate all of you, and I hope you had a great time. See you soon.